2030, tour the great castles of Europe, from dismal dungeons to towering turrets, tonight on the Learning Channel.
You're watching the Learning Channel.
Ever heard of Murphy's Law? You know, the one that says, if anything can go wrong, it will. Well, if Murphy's Law ever strikes, this is the safest place to be. Lloyd's of London. Because there is nothing you can't insure against at Lloyd's. All you have to do is pay the premium. And boy, have they insured against some really weird things around here over the years. Piracy, lying, death by gin, spacecraft parachute failure, dead horses, you name it. And the reason they can do all these crazy things, and sometimes insure stuff for hundreds of $millions at a time, is because for 300 years, the underwriters here have spread the risk. Look, each underwriter takes a part of the risk until the entire risk is covered. At which point, Lloyd's can write the policy. And the whole astronomically risky business relies totally on two things. International law for determining responsibility if disaster strikes, and a signature from Lloyd's to determine responsibility if disaster strikes. Next to the two magic words that bind everybody under law. Sign here. It is supremely ironic that international law all started with an act of skullduggery. Here, in the world's busiest shipping lane, then and now, the Straits of Malacca, the stretch of water running between Indonesia and Singapore.
In 1604, a Portuguese galleon is trundling home with a cargo of fat profit in the form of spices, when suddenly out of nowhere comes a Dutch warship and snaffles the lot. Just like that, on the open sea. Causes one almighty stink. Of course, the whole thing's set up by the Dutch, who then hire one of their hotshot lawyers, a fellow called De Groot, to prove that what looked like piracy, stealing, smash and grab, or anything else you want to call it, wasn't. Which he does. And a lot more.
De Groot basically comes up with the concept of the open sea that belongs to nobody, so you can't monopolize trade on it. Which is what the Spanish and Portuguese have done with the spice trade, hence the Dutch piracy.
In 1625, de Groot goes all the way and invents only the whole of international law as we know it. Basically because without it, trade and exploration and colonialism and all that are going to go from disorganized to chaotic.
I mean, the Western powers are up every undiscovered backwater, planting the flag on anything dry enough to land on. The Pope's carving up Brazil before anybody's even been there. The Turks claim to own only the entire planet. Protestant legislation doesn't work in Catholic countries. And nobody is asking any local natives their opinion about anything. So whose law is right? Especially when it comes down to the essential matters in life, money and commerce. Well, de Groot says anybody should be free to buy and sell anything they like, writes out some rules for weighing the evidence, and basically invents international law. Law's only any good as long as everybody plays by the rules, which back then you wouldn't have bet on.
16. Too many.
Which is why, a little later, a Frenchman called Blaise Pascal was to be found at the gaming tables trying to work out the odds that would tell lawyers which way a jury would jump one way or the other. Well, to be fair, he was also trying to come up with a foolproof system for an aristocratic pal. And in case you're that way inclined, Pascal worked out that an even chance of getting a pair of sixes needed 24.555 rolls of the dice, if your nerve lasted that long. But Pascal's real trump card was this little trick. It's called the mathematical triangle, and you can do all sorts of amazing things with it. Here's just one. That's not a row, so this is row 1, row 2, row 3. 1 and 3 is 4, and 3 is 7, and 1's 8. The number of ways 3 coins can fall is 8. And most probably this way. Once, 3 heads. 3 times out of 8, 2 heads and a tail. 3 times out of 8, 2 tails and a head. And once, 3 tails. And you can build this triangle up as big as you like and handle really astronomically big numbers. What Pascal had invented here was probability math. Just as well, because he was about to get into deep doo-doo with the church about just that. Probability. I suppose Pascal was the 17th century equivalent of a hippie, an unconventional free thinker. A very dangerous thing to be, back at a time when the church had power of thumbscrew. So when he got friendly with some freedom of conscience activists, very probably things were going to get nasty. Pascal's friends were called Jansenists. And basically they said, look, if you've got a problem with a matter of conscience that's bothering you, say like this, then you bother the church with it and the church will tell you what to do, because it's probable the church knows best. The Jansenists said, come on, it's much more probable you know best. After all, it's your conscience. Well, all this went over with kings and popes like a lead balloon. If you could hop on your bike and escape to Holland, you might get away with it. But in France, for instance, the church went absolutely ape. Because if individuals didn't have to obey the church, who would they obey? So by 1700, most Jansenists were either under house arrest, in hiding, or dead. Because if the powers that be said, keep your mouth shut back then, you did. Mind you, some monks did, anyway. Here's a couple of 17th century monks dishing the dirt on the abbot, cracking the latest jokes, and generally networking. Want to listen in? Okay. Here you go. No, there's nothing wrong with your hearing. These guys belong to a silent order, and back then they're only allowed to talk with their hands. So not surprisingly, it's a monk who invents a sign language for deaf people to use to communicate. And then an out-of-work Jansenist priest opens a school to teach it. But by mid-19th century, there's a row about whether to teach deaf people to make signs or sounds. And you've already heard about that argument if you ever went to the movie My Fair Lady. More about that when Connections 2 returns in a moment here on the Learning Channel.
Follow The Road to Gettysburg, Monday night at 10 on the Learning Channel.
The new 9
960 is a very different kind of Volvo. So, we thought we'd run it by you. The new 960 from Volvo.
Pilot pen was absolute supreme quality then, and if anything, it's even better today. It's different and it's unique. Pilot is the absolute best pen that money can buy.
At BASF, we don't make the cooler. We make it cooler. We don't make the jeans. We make them bluer. We don't make the toys. We make them tougher. We don't make the water scooter. We make it lighter. At BASF, we don't make a lot of the products you buy. We make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF.
You ready to go home now?
Hey, you sure gave us quite a scare, young lady.
I don't know how to thank you, Doctor.
You already did, by getting Susie the Medical Alert bracelet. It told us of Susie's allergies and helped us provide the right treatment fast. If you have allergies or take medications, call Medical Alert. It could save your life. Call now for free information.
For people with epilepsy, things have changed. They're reaching new heights, traveling new roads, swinging for the fences. But some still need more help. The Epilepsy Foundation of America is here to help. Let's not leave anybody out of life.
Oh my God.
Was this a UFO or wasn't it?
One thing I'm certain of, there's not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. Self-luminous, unidentified object.
There is indeed a cover-up of information.
I hope that someday we find out what it's all about.
What's going on up there?
UFO on Science Frontiers, Wednesday at 10 on the Learning Channel.
And now back to Connections 2 and that play about language, My Fair Lady.
Say your alphabet.
I know my alphabet. Do you think I know nothing? I don't need to be taught like a child.
Professor Higgins in the original play is based on a real Scottish elocution teacher who'd invented something called visible speech. Symbols for sounds that Higgins uses to write down Eliza Doolittle's speech patterns.
A, B, C, D...
Stop! Listen to this, Pickering. This is what we pay for as elementary education. This unfortunate animal has been locked up for 9 years in school at our expense to teach her to read and speak the language of Shakespeare and Milton. And the result is I, B, C, D. Say A, B, C, D.
But I'm saying it! A, B, C...
Stop! Say a cup of tea.
A cup of tea.
Put your tongue forward until it squeezes against the top of your lower teeth. Now say cup.
Oh, come on. Cup.
The Scotsman's Visible Speech book pushed that idea about teaching deaf people to make sounds. It was an idea that would lead to one of the most important inventions in the modern world. Because in 1874, that Scots elocution teacher's son was in Boston teaching deaf people to talk. And his problem was, how would deaf people know when they were making the right noises?
T, 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 T.
I can't hear no difference, except it sounds more genteel like when you say it.
Well, if you can hear that difference, what the devil are you crying for? Pickering, give her a chocolate. By the time I've finished, we shall hear music in the weather patterns of Europe. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain.
And then he came across this French gizmo. You speak down a horn at a thin membrane, it vibrates, and a bristle attached to it moves up and down, and traces a wiggly line on smoked glass.
The rain in Spain falls mainly
like this.
on the plain.
The rain in Spain. This gave our Scotsman son an idea. If you could get a metal membrane to vibrate and wriggle a bit of iron in and out of a copper coil attached to a battery, you'd get wavy electricity that would go down a line and cause the reverse to happen at the other end, make another membrane wriggle and reproduce the original sound.
By Jehovah, what have I done?
We call the Scotsman's son's idea, and by the way his name was Alexander Graham Bell, the telephone. Meanwhile, where the whole business of writing down speech as wriggly lines goes next, the international community and all that United Nations Geneva speak talk, every mind-numbing word of which has to be painstakingly recorded so it can be published in a dozen languages for nobody to read. Record-keeping was the problem facing international organizations when they started back in the late 19th century. A problem solved by visible speech. Well, this version of visible speech, shorthand. The breaking up of speech sounds into symbols that can be written down as fast as anybody can talk. In other words, the use of the wiggly line and the invention of take a letter, Miss Smith. Now, Isaac Pitman, who invented shorthand, was also a closet pacifist and very keen on promoting international understanding through the use of shorthand, because it fitted all languages at all international meetings, because it was phonetic, so it was common to all languages, spoken by all delegates.
If there is a crime with respect to which any group in the world, any significant group of states, is opposed to that being a crime under general international law.
Le statut est une sorte de compromis entre ces deux tendances. À cet égard, tout le monde reconnaît l'idée.
The whole common language thing got taken up in a very big way by a failed Russian eye doctor who invented a whole new international language called Esperanto, on the basis that it would bring peace on earth and end all wars, and besides, save a ton of money on interpreters and translators sitting in booths like these, doing things like this. Esperanto nearly got made official here, when this place was the League of Nations, as a matter of fact. Nearly. Well, even if Esperanto didn't catch on, at the end of the 19th century, with a war somewhere every 10 minutes, they were rather keen to find something that might help promote some measure of international understanding. The problem was solved by Pitman, with a development on his phonetic spelling idea, because there is nothing in any language around the globe that you cannot say using the International Phonetic Alphabet. Well, within seconds of the alphabet coming out, every research student in sight was grabbing for the nearest grant proposal, one of which was for a cozy little piece of research that some German guy fiddled, called A Phonetic Examination of the French Accent, made more properly scientific by some help from one of his physicist pals, a guy called Pringsheim. I'll tell you about Pringsheim when Connections 2 returns in a moment here on the Learning Channel.
Oh, what'll I eat? I'm having a fit. I know. I'm gonna get me some kibbles and bits. What, kibbles and bits jerky? New kibbles and bits bacon cheese? Oh, help me decide. Oh, please, please, please. Okay, kibbles and bits. The original one. Yes, that one. That one is fun. Whoa. I'm berserky for kibbles and bits.